everybody, this is Heather Sides. I'm the Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Spokane, Washington, and I am coming to you this Wednesday to show you a few ideas that I have, products from the new catalog, which I'll talk about in a minute. Last week we focused on thank you cards, and you know, thank you and birthday will probably be a theme a lot of the time just because those are so versatile to use over and over again. So while we're sitting here like this, I'm just kind of waiting for this to show up on my screen, and it looks like I am sideways. So let's get the camera turned here. I don't like to have to do it with the camera in portrait, but it looks like that's what we're going to be doing tonight. So we'll make it work. We always do. So let's see what I have. Do I have anything exciting to tell you about while we're waiting for a few people to join us here? Let me get myself set up to make sure that I can see your comments and see when you're on. Like I said, we'll wait just another minute or two to make sure that people have a chance to get on, and then we'll spring into action. So let's see. Really, the only exciting news around here is that both my daughter and my stepson have COVID. One of them is over in Seattle and one of them is down in Texas, so I'm not able to really help out either one of them right now. So I'm just keeping my fingers crossed, hoping that they have mild cases of it. My daughter told me that she's feeling pretty much like trash today, but I hope that's just the worst of it. And my stepson, I think, was just, he's had a headache and he's tired. So again, fingers crossed that that's the worst of it for both of them and they're back on the road to recovery quickly. You know, that's really the only new news I've got in my life. I don't lead a very exciting life, I'm sorry to tell you. So let's go ahead and turn this camera around and we will get going on the projects that I have for you after we do just a little bit of housekeeping, okay? Hang on just a second. My stand, I tightened it too well, and there we go. Hey Tina, how are you? Nice to have you this week. Just getting everything set up here. Oh, and it's gonna be sideways again, isn't it? Let's see how it turns out. Yes, it is. So let me get it turned, then you should be okay. Just what you wanted to see was my keyboard for my computer, right? Well, we'll do it this way, and then at least I will have most of the stuff I do on camera, since I tend to do stuff close to my tummy and then you can't see what I'm doing. Okay, so a couple of housekeeping things here as I get my camera going straight. This month's paper pumpkin is available to order through January 10th. It's called Kisses and Hugs, and it looks like it's going to be really pretty. It's kind of silvery or gold. It's a metallic. I can't quite tell which one it is. And the cards look like they are trifold hearts. And then you can also add on these little matching gift boxes if you want. So it looks like a neat little set. You have till January 10th to order it. We did get an email today from Stampin' Up! Letting us know that they are going to be a little bit behind on shipping this time. You know, just with the global shipping issues, they've done everything they can to get all of the components in-house in time to get the kits put together and mailed out on time, and it looks like even with all their best efforts, there's still some stuff they're not going to quite get in time. So they will be charging for them and shipping them a little later than normal, but they hope to have everything out still in time for you to make some lovely Valentines to give to the people you care about. Also, Tuesday marked the launch of our January through June mini catalog. And am I looking at the wrong one here? You know what? I'm looking at an old one. That is so funny. Hang on, let me grab the right one. This is so funny. This was from January, June 2021. I didn't even know I still had any of these. Okay, let's look at the right catalog. New mini catalog, lots of beautiful, beautiful sets in here. Some really fun stuff that we haven't had before that I'm excited to do some stuff with. Right now, everything tonight is going to be with new sets, but what I have that's new is still sort of limited, and I'm expecting to get a bunch of stuff in probably sometime next week. So I'm excited to share those things with you. If you do not have a demonstrator that you work with in the United States, and you would like a copy of this new mini catalog, I would be happy to send one to you. So just be sure to send me an email or a Facebook message, either way, and let me know your address and that you would like a catalog, and I'm happy to send one your way. Then we also have Sale-a-Bration, which launched on Tuesday as well. For those of you who may not be familiar with Sale-a-Bration, this is a campaign that we're running January through February, and it is full of free gifts for you. For every $50 that you spend, you can pick one of these free gifts out of this catalog, and there's some really neat stuff in a variety of tastes. There also is a $100 level where if you place a $100 order, you could either pick 2 of the $50 gifts, or you could pick 1 of the $100 gifts, totally up to you, and there's no limit to how many of the gifts you can earn. So you just go ahead and place whatever size order you want to place, and you will get to select the corresponding number of free gifts between now and the end of February. It is important to know that they are like limited in how many they have. So once something runs out in this Sale-a-Bration catalog, they don't restock it usually. So don't put off your order until the end of February, just because you want to make sure that you get in on the free gifts that you in particular want before they're gone. So that's all I have for housekeeping tonight. Let's go ahead and get started on some cards. So let's see here. We'll start with a really simple one here. This one I'm using the Amazing Silhouettes stamp set. And I also am using the Sweet as a Peach set just to pull in this happy birthday message. This Amazing Silhouettes also has a corresponding die cut set that goes with it that has words that it die cuts out. Let me pull it out and we'll see what those words are, so I can tell you for sure. I'm pretty sure that amazing is one of the words. And then here I am, I'm just looking at the catalog here to try to pull it up, thinking I was going to be able to do this without my glasses, which is always a joke because, you know, I end up putting them on every time, so you'd think I'd quit trying, but okay, so we're looking at page 40 of the catalog. If you have yours, you can follow right along with me. So these are the stamps that we're using, and then the dies that come with it. There's thanks, there's you, amazing, are, so you could say you are amazing. And there's, the way these are done, you can see, and this one is a good example to show you what I'm talking about. There's like a background shadow die that you can do behind it as well, or you can just do it like this one where you just use the word by itself. So that's kind of, I think that's going to be kind of fun to play with, and they're nice and big. So I've ordered mine, I just don't have it yet. So let's go ahead and get started with this card. And this card is what we're gonna create. And I actually cased this from somebody on Pinterest, and her name is Taya Woodward. And I don't know who she is, but I thought this was a beautiful card. And usually when we case something, we, you know, CASE is an acronym for copy, or what is it? Copy and selectively edit. But to be honest, I didn't feel there was anything that needed to be edited on this card. I really liked the simplicity of it. So we're just going to make it as is. And then what I did for my flap, for my envelope, is because we're going to be stamping with the soft succulent, I got out a piece of our Soft Succulent Designer Series paper, And I'm just going to make the flap with that. So that's something to keep in mind, that you don't necessarily have to have matching DSP or matching stamps that you want to stamp all over the envelope to create a matching envelope. You can go with the colors, and all of our color families have these very basic prints in designer series paper. So let's go ahead and get this glued on. And I'm also tonight, this is one of our very vanilla envelopes. We sell them in both white and vanilla. And most of the time I use white. I think most of the time most people use white. But I do like to have the vanilla on hand because sometimes I just like that warmer look. And our envelopes, if you have not used the Stampin' Up! Envelopes before, they are really, really nice. I like them a lot. They're just nice and heavy, so they're good quality. They feel good in your hand. And they're not badly priced either. I can't think of the price right off the top of my head. I want to say it's like $7.50 for 40 of them or something like that. But don't quote me on it. So I just glued that piece of designer series paper on, and now I'm going to just trim the excess right off. Go around the edges here. You can see it's so simple to decorate envelopes, and I like to decorate mine just because, you know, when that person gets the envelope in the mail, it jumps out at them because most of your mail doesn't come decorated that way. So it's kind of nice, just a little something extra. And if you use your designer series paper, then you can buy more. You know, a lot of us hoard our designer series paper, and then we can't justify buying new ones that come out because we're like, oh, I have so much that I haven't used yet. So use it. And then, you know, if you need more of that kind, you can always buy more of that kind. But you can also easier justify to yourself getting more of a new kind that comes out. And we have some beautiful new ones that just came out with this new mini catalog. So just something to think about. Now let's go ahead and get started with our card. I've got, for my card base, it's just your standard half a sheet of very vanilla. It's 5.5 by 8.5. I scored it right in the middle at 4 1/4. We're gonna fold it, and let's see here. Go over it with the bone folder so that we get a nice crisp edge there. It also helps the card to stay shut when the edge is really crisp, just as a little FYI. And this card does not require a whole lot of pieces. I'm gonna have to grab another little extra piece that it looks like I forgot to grab. So give me just a moment, I'm gonna get that. Okay, just needed a little bit of a tag that we're gonna put on here for our happy birthday message, nice and simple. Okay, first let's stamp the inside of the card. And that's how, you know, I like to decorate the inside of the cards. And so we're gonna do that. Here, let me get my Stamparatus. This stamp is a little larger, and with the larger stamps, I tend to prefer to use my Stamparatus. Let me turn it this way, just because then it won't get in the way of my camera. So what we're going to do here is move the little magnets out of the way, and we're going to use this really big stamp right here. Now for the inside of the card, I don't want the image to be too bold because I want you to still be able to write your message over it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our card. And you know what? I normally do it this way. Okay, so I like to line my card up with this little Stampin' Up! Guy right here, because then that way I know where it's at. If it moves a little and I need to put it back, I know where I had it. So I'm just gonna line it up here. It's kind of sideways just because of the direction that I have my Stamparatus going. So give me just a moment here as I get it the way I want it. Now, If I were using a layering piece, which I'm going to do on the front, I would just put a little bit of adhesive on the back of this and stick it to my little board because that's easy and it holds it in place. But this is the back of the card, and so I don't want to put adhesive on the back of the card. Well, magnets were totally sticking together there. They are very, very strong magnets. In fact, if you have a stamparatus or you get a stamparatus, be careful that your magnets don't like clink together really fast, because they're so strong, they'll clink together so hard that they break, which is why I have one big one and two small ones. Look at how, it's a very strong magnet, I'm telling you. Okay, so now this is going to just hold this in place while I lay my stamp where I'm going to want it to be on the card. So I lay it down like that with the sticky side up, and then all I have to do is bring my panel over like that and press it, and it picks up the stamp. So when I lay it back down, it's going to stamp it exactly where I had it. Now we're going to use a little bit of the soft succulent ink here, and I'm going to ink it up. A really good tip for you here is to put a stamp case right under your panel for re-inking, because it just gives a little bit of sturdiness as you're trying to ink that up, so you get better even coverage. Okay, now I'm going to actually want to stamp off this image, which means I want to stamp it on scratch paper first so that it gives me a lighter image when I actually stamp it onto my card. So let me get a piece of scratch paper here. And I'm just going to lay it right here. I don't care about it being perfect and right in place. So now I'm going to bring this over and stamp it once. I'm going to rub it around. Is the feed cutting out on you guys or freezing on you? It's happening a lot on my screen where I'm watching it, but it's not happening on my phone where I'm recording it. So I don't know if the problem is on my end or if Facebook is being funny or what's going on. Okay, so I just stamped that image, set it aside. Now I'm going to stamp it onto my card, where now hopefully I will get just a very light version of it, because I just want it in the background, but light so that you can still write your message over it and it won't be distracting. Okay. Oh yes, that's great. I really like that. You can hardly see it. In fact, I don't know how well you can see it in the camera. I can bring it up close so you can see it better. It's just very, very light and subtle. Now let's do the other piece for the front. We might as well do them all while we're here. So I line it up. Now this is the one that I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of adhesive on the back of it, because it's going to end up going onto another piece anyway. No one's going to see that, and then it holds it in place while I'm using the stamparatus. So we'll put it right there. Now the magnets would do the same thing, holding it in place, but I don't know, I'm just weird about it, and I worry that they'll still move even with the magnets. I've never heard people complain that they do. I'm just weird that way. What I'm doing right now, what you're seeing is sometimes when your blade is brand new, your cutting blade, it leaves this kind of little lip on the edge of your paper, and that bugs me. It really bugs me. So what I do is I take my bone folder and go over those little edges, and it flattens them back out. Okay, so let's stamp, or ink our stamp here. Now we're gonna bring it, uh-oh. It's not lined up well at all anymore, is it? Okay, so what we're gonna need to do here is move this up a little bit. Actually, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna clean my stamp so that I can set it up the way I did before, just to make sure I've got everything where I want it. So bear with me while we do this. This will only take a moment. Got my little Stampin' Chamois, and it cleans up my stamp quite nicely. Okay, let's try this again. So I'm going to lay my paper down. Again, you could hold it in place with your magnets. I just use a little bit of adhesive. Then we set the stamp down where we want it to stamp. The other nice thing about this is with a big stamp, you don't always get the best ink coverage as you could. And when you stamp it, you're like, I just don't like that image as well. It's not as dark or as deep as I want it to be. If you're using your Stamparatus, all you have to do is re-ink it and re-stamp it, and it's going to stamp in the exact same place, and you don't have to worry about lining it up over the original image, and then you get a better setting of your ink. Okay. Oh, you know what? I forgot to ink my stamp. Well, we're really on a roll here. I'm a professional. Don't try this at home. No, I do want you to try this stuff at home because it's fun, and you know, we love our stamping. We just make silly mistakes sometimes. So what I want to do is looks like I got a little bit of ink on the panel there. I don't want to accidentally press it down onto my card, so I'm just going to wipe it up really quick. Okay, keep that out just in case I need it again. So I've inked up my, oh, I do need it again. There's some over on this side too. Okay, so I've inked up my stamp. Now I'm gonna lay it down here on my paper. I bet it looks a whole lot better with ink than it did without ink. I figure that's a pretty safe assumption to make. There we go. And I don't even think I need to do it a second time. I think I like the amount of ink that's on there. So now if I were going to do a bunch of cards like this, you know, and want to mass produce these, I could just now grab the next piece of paper, put it in that same spot, and then ink the stamp again and stamp it again. And I already know where everything needs to be. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're mass producing. The Stamparatus really is very helpful. So I'm just going to clean off this stamp a little bit. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Okay. Oh, now I'm knocking stuff over. I'm like a bull in a china shop today. Okay. Well, there's still some on there, darn it. What I should do is just let it go and clean it later. But then it'll bother me the rest of the night that it's sitting there with ink on it that I don't want on it. Anybody else like that? Like your brain just can't let it go, so you have to fix it? Okay, let's see. Okay. Now, I'm going to take my little piece off of here. And for now, I'm just going to close this. And I'll put it away and deal with it all later. Okay. Now, this piece that we just stamped, all we're going to do is layer it onto a slightly larger piece of crumb cake cardstock. So put a little adhesive on there. Let's move some stuff out of our way. So I've just got a tiny little bit of a margin on there, just enough to pop it off of the card a little bit, but not so much that it's a bold matte. Okay, there we go. So now what I want to do is I have two lengths. This is probably way more than what I needed. You'd probably only need about, probably about 8, well, maybe a little more than 8 inches, about 10 inches or so. But I kind of went crazy when I got it. And we're going to tie a double bow around the card. And at this point, just tie the bow. Don't worry about the placement of where the bow is, because you can move it around after it's tied. I find that sometimes while I'm tying it, it moves around. And if you don't have to worry about making sure it stays in its spot, it's just one less thing to deal with while you're trying to tie your bow. Okay. Okay, so I tied my bow. Now sometimes when I tie my bow, it ends up a little bit loose. I don't like how it's fitting there. So what I'm going to do is first, let's get the bow the way we want it. What's going on here? I have a whole lot of pieces of tail here sticking in the way. Okay, so what I want to do is pull these little tails down because that'll get them out of the way at the very least. And now I want to get my loops where I want them. And my tails are quite a bit longer than they need to be right now. We'll definitely trim those when we're ready. But here's my bow. Now, as you can see, it's a little loose going around the card. And a simple trick for fixing that, and I've shown this before, is to roll it over to the back. There are my scissors. There they are. And just go ahead and cut it. Because now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of tear and tape. And I'm going to pull this tight right where I want it. And sometimes it'll overlap a little more than it does here because there wasn't that much cushion. But before we adhere this down, let's put our bow off to the side here because that's where I wanted my bow. So now, oops, we got a little guy hanging out here. This is not nearly as complicated as I am making it look tonight. Apparently that's just what I'm doing tonight, is I'm making things look difficult. Because then when you go to do it, you will feel like such a pro because it'll be so easy for you. Okay, now got my bow where I want it. Let's go ahead and trim that a little bit. Okay, kind of like that bow. I wish it was facing the other way, but that's okay. Okay, so now I have a little strip that I cut in the Very Vanilla. It's 3/4 of an inch wide. And we're just going to stamp Happy Birthday on here. Again, I got the Happy Birthday stamp from the Sweet as a Peach set. And when I am stamping with the, hi Doris, thanks for joining us, welcome. When I'm stamping with the photopolymer stamps, I do like to use my piercing mat because these stamps don't have the same cushion on them that, that the red rubber stamps have. So to stamp on your piercing mat gives it that cushion it needs, and you'll get a better image when you do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, you know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to cut the end of this first, because then that'll help me see where I want to stamp my message. So this is my my tag punch, and it accommodates 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, and 1 inch, and you just feed it in there. Oops, I want this side. You just feed it in, line it up in there, and then go ahead and punch it. And you can see when I pull it out that it created that little tag for me, that little border or whatever you want to call it. The banner, that's what they're called, banners. Now I know where that point is, and I'm not stamping near something that would have been cut off. And I'm going to stamp my message right here. Oh, that's a little crooked, isn't it? Well, that's not terrible. Let's do the other side just to see if it's any better. Ah, that's definitely not better. So we'll go with that one. That's okay. And clean off my stamp. Okay, now let's put away this ink. And I'm going to go ahead and I want to see about how much I want to trim off of this. So it looks like I want to trim off about this much. And I'm going to just put it right in here. You can see how I'm lining it up. Now I want to pop this up with dimensionals, but I don't like it when the dimensionals sit on the ribbon because then it doesn't lay flat and it's just kind of wonky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the mini dimensionals, if I can find them. I know I have them in here, they're there. And I'm going to use my Take Your Pick tool, which you guys know I use it all the time for lots and lots of stuff. And what I'm going to do is take these little dimensionals and I want to put them, I want to put one right there on the end, but then the other ones, I'm going to go ahead and put them right up to the edge there. And you know me, I like to use a lot of the dimensionals because I don't like it to sag at all. Some people are very conservative with the dimensionals they use, and that's okay too if that's what you prefer. Whoops. But I'm putting them all the way to the edge like this so that when the dimensionals are, I should try this in English. The dimensionals are going to straddle the thread so that there aren't any dimensionals on the thread. Looks like a couple of these might be over a little too far, yeah. And I just realized that one I have on the end isn't going to work really well in that spot because it's going to be where the thread is. So we're just going to not put one on the end there. Move it over here. Put one more on. Guess I could put one here, that would help with that end. As you can see, I kind of go crazy with these. Another thing that would have worked, and actually I think it's what I might have done on my sample card, I used our foam adhesive strips and just did along each side, and that worked well. Okay, so let's take all the little backs off. I don't know why I'm so discombobulated tonight. I had everything ready and organized and I don't know, I don't know. Okay, so now I'm just gonna lay this on here again so that it's straddling the baker's twine. Put my bow up over the edge like so. This suddenly looks a lot longer than the other tails. So let's make sure our tails, oh yeah, it's quite a bit longer. So let's make sure our tails are the same length. There. Now let's go ahead and put some adhesive on here. We're going to stick it down to our card. I had thought about adding some something sparkly, you know, some little pretties on the card, some embellishments, but I just really liked the simplicity of this one, so I didn't. But if you think it needs a little bit of extra something, then add it, because, you know, when you make a card, you get to make it the way you want it. So where did I put my card base? It's over here. See, I told you I'm all discombobulated tonight. Okay. My card got all munched up there. Okay, so now melt this on. Hi, Sue, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so now we have card number 1 with the matching envelope, and we are ready to move on to card number 2. What do you guys think? Okay, so now our next, actually let me clean this up a little bit. I tend to make a mess when I stamp, so I might as well start out clean. Okay, now the next card I've got for you, this one is kind of fun and uses a technique that I've shown before that I really like, and it's called whitewashing. So this one is using a stamp set called In the Moment, another new set in the new catalog, and I really like this. I like this style a lot. We have a couple of sets that are this style, and I really like it. And tonight we're going to use the girl sitting here reading her book with her dog. And the message that we're going to use, we're going to actually stamp on the inside. Let me show you. So here's the envelope and the card. And on the inside we're going to use, "You're always so good to others, be good to yourself too." So let's get going on our card. Start with a half of a sheet of basic white cardstock. And we also carry a thick white cardstock that a lot of people use for their bases. I personally like to use the regular cardstock. It's a little bit smoother. I like it a little bit better. But again, that's totally up to you, whatever your preference is. And I scored this one right in the middle like I usually do, but it looks like it was a little bit off. So again, I'm gonna take my bone folder and flatten that out. But I have to find the bone folder in my little pile here. Oh, there it is. It was trying to escape. Okay, so got the card base there. And now we've got a piece of our designer series paper. This designer series paper comes from a set called Heart. I think the suite is Heart and Home. Let's take a peek here. You can buy just the designer series paper, or you can buy the suite of products, and it really is a nice suite. We're going to use the stamps in this suite in our last card. But let me show you. If you look in the catalog on page... Why am I not seeing it? Oh, okay, so it's on page 59 of your catalog. And you can see it looks really, really soft here in the picture in the catalog. And I mean, it's beautiful, beautiful paper, and it is kind of a softer look to it. But it does definitely look a lot softer than when you're looking at the actual paper that's still a little bit darker. And this suite of products, it's the Blessings of Home bundle, where you can get the stamps and the die cuts, or you can buy the whole suite. Let's see here, the whole suite is called Heart and Home. So let's get our envelope done. Get that out of the way so it has a minute or two to dry while we're making the card. So any of you guys have anything fun happen to you this week or coming up in the next week? Do tell, because like I said, my life is not all that exciting, and so I love to live vicariously through others. I have this obnoxious message on my screen that I can't get rid of, and it really bothers me. Okay, so let's see if I push exit, if that would get rid of it. Okay, all right, well, I'll survive. So I put the glue on, let's put the paper on. I really like this designer series paper pack. It, like I said, it goes with the Heart and Home bundle, but even by itself, there's so much you can do with it. As you can see, I'm not even using those stamps with this card. It's just really, really pretty. And the back sides of it, it's all different wood grain prints, but they're light. Like instead of being brown or black, you can see on this one, it's more of a gray. So it does have a little bit more of a feminine feel to it. And I do like my girly stuff. Okay. And you know, if you cut off a little bit of your envelope while you're trimming those edges, it really doesn't matter. It still looks fine. Okay, so let's set that aside. Let's get started on the card. Where is... Oh, there's my card front. Okay, so I have a piece of Misty Moonlight cardstock, and then I have a piece of the designer series paper, and they're just going to layer like that. So let's go ahead and glue those together now, just to so that we have fewer loose pieces floating around. And I am using Stampin' Seal Plus. That's my adhesive, my go-to adhesive for most things. I really like it. But you'll see I use all different kinds of adhesive depending on what exactly I'm trying to do. But for the most part, I would say the Seal Plus is my go-to. Okay, so we glued that down. Now what we're going to do is I have this little strip. It's 1 inch wide, and I thought, oh, I want to use that time-worn type embossing folder, and because I haven't used it much, and then made the little tag out of it, and then realized it was in the winter catalog that just retired, and I thought, oh no, it's retired, so I can't use it. So instead I used the Tasteful Textile embossing folder. Then when I got everything all done, I was going through our list of retired items and realized that the time-worn type embossing folder is not retired. It is one of the items that was in that catalog that they are continuing to make available for use. So if you have not had a chance to play with that particular embossing folder yet, you can still order it. Okay, so I'm fitting my strip in here, doing the same thing we did when we cut the other one, only this time I used the other side so it cuts in. And I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to adhere it to my card just like that. Sometimes the Seal Plus, especially with this particular embossing pattern, the Seal Plus tears up the paper when you try to go across it. I'm not quite sure why it does that. So I like to use my tear and tape when I do this, when I use this particular embossing folder. So we're going to stick that on there. This is a very, very strong adhesive. So when you're adhering something that maybe is going to get a lot of manual use, or something that normal lighter adhesives don't necessarily hold the papers together as well, this is a great adhesive to use. So I like to take my bone folder and just go over that tape a little bit just to make sure it's pushed into the paper. And then take your pick tool, and I'm going to take off the release tape. Who else here has a take your pick tool? Does anybody have one? I know where you can get one if you don't. Okay, and these are really nice. They're like $10, and they have multiple tips that do different things, and I use them all. Okay, so now let's stick this down on our card. I want it to be about right here. It doesn't have to be super precise. You do want to, if you're using the tear and tape though, you do want to make sure it's straight before you totally lay it down, because it can be quite unforgiving. So I typically will lay it down and then check to make sure it's where I want it before I really firmly press it into place. Okay, I think that looks good. Now what we're going to do is I have two pieces here. I have basic white and more of the misty moonlight. Let's move some stuff out of the way here. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I want to stamp this with my, let me find it here, my Stays On ink. And the reason for that is because Stays On ink won't blur if it gets wet. So I'm going to use this stamp, as I said, the one with the girl reading the book while holding on to her puppy. Okay, and now I want to make sure it's inked up really well. Now I'm going to go ahead and just center it on this Misty Moonlight piece. Make sure that it's pressed on there well. I just saw Doris's comment that you have one of the take your pick tools. Do you use it all the time? I love mine. Okay, cleaned off my stamp. Now we're going to do the whitewashing technique. And this is really simple to do. And I think it gives a really cool look to it. So I'm just going to take one of my little acrylic blocks that doesn't have a stamp on it. I'm going to put a few drops of white craft ink on there. Doesn't really take a lot. And then I'm going to take my, these are our water, what do they call it? Water brushes or water pens. And these are really neat because they're a regular brush, but there's water in the handle. So all you have to do is squeeze it and then you get a nice wet brush. You don't have to dip it in like a little bowl of water or whatever, or cup. Now I'm just squeezing some of that water onto my block where my craft ink is, because I do want to water it down, because I don't want it to be a really bright white. I want it to be sort of opaque where you can still kind of see through it. So now what I'm going to do is I do want to get some of this extra off though. I think I should have used maybe a bigger block because I used a lot of ink there that I probably shouldn't have, but that's okay. Okay, so now all I want to color on here, I want to be careful, but just coloring the book. I'm going to color her legs and her blanket around her. And at first you can't see the black outlines of these images, like the book you can't really see that black, but as the white soaks into the paper you can get to where you can see them, so you'll still be able to see the lines. Okay, so now I want to go ahead and get her blanket. And you don't have to have a ton of precision on this. I just grabbed a brush that was probably a little bigger than what I needed. The brushes, when you purchase them, you get 3 and they come in 3 different sizes. One is a wider, not necessarily a fan brush, but it's still pretty wide. And then there's this one, this is the kind of medium one, and then there's one that's a lot thinner. And part of me kind of is wishing that that's what I had used. We're going to do her pants too. Okay. I think I just heard my husband's car leave. I would like to think that he was leaving to go get me coffee. I mean, not coffee, ice cream. But I bet that is not the case. Okay. So now I've done the blanket here, and I've done her pants, and I did her book. But now I want to do kind of some other colors. So what I'm going to do is take, let's see, I might need to get another little block out. Let's see. Oh, I did have a bigger block to do the white on. Ha! Well, that's what I should have done. All I'm doing is I'm going to get ink on the block by going like this. And now I'm going to pick up some of that yellow, pick up some of the white, and this is going to give me kind of a yellowish whitewash. So I still got some color, but it's going to be that opaque that I'm going to do on the pillows and her bed. Kind of went a little crazy there. Get this one down. I know there's nothing more exciting than just watching someone paint, right? I am trying to speed it along for you guys so that you're not having to sit here forever. Let's get a little more white again, and our yellow. And now we're going to do her bed. And I'm seeing some spots that I missed that I should have gotten with the white. We'll see if I can do that after I get done with the yellow, if I can go back to just white. Now you can see it's, the way I'm doing this is it kind of lightens up along the outer edges there. And that's kind of the look I want, so it's sort of like it's fading away. There we go. Now I want to get rid of that yellow. Actually, you know, before I do that, there's something else I want to do. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to clean off my stamp, or clean off my block, not the white one yet, but the yellow one. And I just clean it off like I clean off a normal stamp. And I'm going to get a little bit of soft suede. And get a little bit on my block. And I'm going to take some of this yellow and mix it with the suede to give her kind of a light brown hair. There we go. Now I want to clean off my brush. Still going to try to go back in and do that white, but I need to clean off the brush before I do anyway. So all I do is I squeeze out more water and then I just keep painting on my scratch paper just like this until what I'm painting is just clear. And then you can run the brush under like a sink under water if you wanted to do that. Okay, let's see if we can get just a little bit of this white. It's picking up some yellow, and I didn't really want the yellow. Okay. Let that soak in. Now, one of the parts of the process of this is just giving it some time to soak into the paper. As you can see, with my original one, it looks very different once it's had time to soak in and dry, because you really get to see the lines show through, so you have more definition of what you stamped on, or what you colored. So we're going to set that aside for a moment. And, you know, by the time we finish, when we finish the card itself, it probably won't be perfectly clear yet, or, you know, not clear, but showing through quite as much as we'd like. But by the time we're done making our third card, you'll really be able to see a difference. And then if you were to look at it the next day, that's when you'll really see the biggest difference, because it'll have dried by then. Okay, so clean this one. The other thing is, at this stage, it still looks kind of blotchy and like you went out of the lines, and it's, you look at it and you go, I'm not so sure. But once it dries and it's really had that chance to soak into the paper, that's when you really like what you see. Okay, so let's put these away. By the way, the colors I used there were the white craft ink, and then I used our regular ink. I used the Bumblebee, and then I added a little bit of soft suede. Okay, Gosh, I'm just making a huge mess here, you guys. That's what I do, I make messes. Okay, now let's go ahead and piece this together. You do want to make sure, take a baby wipe, make sure you've got all the white off of your hands, like I'm doing right here, because it will transfer to your card, and when you're using a color like that blue, it'll really show up. Okay, so wipe my hands off. It's kind of wet here. And now I'm going to stick it onto the, get that little piece folded under. Watch my margins to make sure they're relatively the same everywhere. And now we're going to stick this onto our card, but we're going to use some of the foam adhesive sheets. I love these foam adhesive sheets. They're nice. You don't have to use 100 dimensionals to stick something down. So it looks like I'm going to need about a little more than a half. There we go, or a little less than half a sheet. That's still a little bit long. And you know, when I cut up a piece like this, I just throw my scraps. I have this little messy little basket that I keep all of my stuff that I use all the time, like my adhesives, and I take your pick tool and all of that. And so when I have little scraps like that, I just throw them back in the box, because at some point I'm going to need a piece that's just like that. So now I'm going to stick this onto the back of the little piece there, pull off the adhesive, and I'm going to put it right about here on my card. I want to make sure it's straight, because this is very unforgiving. Once it is down, it is down. So you are committed to putting it right there. Once it sticks the paper, that's it. Now I'm going to take some of our 2020 to 2022 in color square gems, and I'm going to add some of these little blue squares onto the yellow strip there. I did have a hard time with this just because I am really particular about it having to be perfectly straight, but I'm not necessarily good at getting it perfectly straight, so then I have to fiddle with it forever. So I'm hoping that they go on pretty easily tonight. Well, they go on easily. It's just, you know, they aren't self-directed. You have to put them on straight if you want them to be straight. Funny thing. Okay. This one wasn't too bad tonight, getting them all on there. Now let's go ahead and put these away, and then we're going to adhere that card front to our card. What did I do on the inside? Oh yeah, we just stamped the message. So let's go ahead and stamp our message. The reason I want to do that now is because if I did something that kind of screwed up the message and I didn't like it, I could always just get a new card base. If I've already glued down my card front, now I'm kind of stuck with it and I have to figure out what to do. So I've got my Misty Moonlight ink. And I'm going to stamp it right about here. There we go. Clean off the stamp. And some of that white ink is getting all over my stamp that I had on my chamois. When you use the chamois to clean off craft ink like that, you pretty much need to rinse it out because it doesn't like to dry, and then it'll just get all over everything else. Okay, so now let's stick our card down where we want it. There we go. And card number 2 is done and ready to go. What do you think? So you can already see that black is starting to show through, and you can see the lines a little better, so there's more definition to what we colored. Okay, now let's go ahead and we're going to move on to card number 3. I want to show you a new technique I learned. This is called the watercolor technique. And I would say it's easy to do, but you kind of got to play with it a little bit because it needs to be somewhat precise. And I'm going to show you how to do it. And I did it both on my envelope and on the card front here. So let's get going on that and I'll show you how it's done. I have my half a sheet of Misty Moonlight, 5.5 by 8.5, scored at 4 1/4. You know the drill. It's kind of fun because the examples in the catalog for this set are some very natural tones, some browns and some yellows and some blues, very soft looking. So last night when I made this is the first time I've actually seen this set used with a bright color like that pink, and I fell in love with it. Normally I like to do my envelope right off the bat, but I want to show you this technique first because we're using it on the envelope also. So we will, I have to find out which one's bigger here. We'll do our one for the card front, and then we'll do our envelope. This is the piece for the inside of the card, so let's do our inside first. All I did for the inside is I took these little dies. Let me show you the stamp set. This is the stamp set, Blessings of Home. And it's got these beautiful flowers and some nice, really nice messages here. I love the thank you for inspiring me. And these are the dies that go with it. These two cut out the flowers, and then these are just extra foliage and flowers that you can put around your card in other ways. So what I did, and you're going to actually see me use one of those dies tonight because I wanted to stamp the image before I cut it. So here's how this little technique works. I'm going to take my, you know what, I want to get another one of these because I'm just going to put other paper on it because it's very wet. And I don't want to get that white all over my blue card. I'll just steal it out of the printer. Okay. All I do, for those of you who've not seen me do this before, this is what our piercing mat looks like. It's just kind of a rubber foamy thing. And I just wrap a piece of paper around it so that I don't get ink all over my mat. And then I take just some regular tape and tape it on there. Okay. Now, I'm just taking a piece of white, basic white cardstock. Oh, we're doing the inside of the card first. That's right. Okay, so I made a few of those dies. And for the inside, I've got one of these blue, tall blue ones, little flowers. And I'm just going to stick it on here right about there, I think. So we'll put a little glue on it. You want to just put a tiny, tiny little bit of glue because you don't want it squishing out everywhere all over your card. You can see I'm barely putting glue on here, but it's just enough that it will stick. This is a good glue. Okay, and I'm going to put that right about there, like that. Then I have two little pink ones Right here I used the polished pink. We're going to stick those on. And I just kind of lined it up to overlap like that. And I have one more, another of the polished pink. Put a little glue on there. There. And that's all I did to decorate the inside. I can see there's some of those little lips standing up that I was talking about, that edge from my blade. So I'm just going to scrape those down a little bit. And now, there it is. You can see I used this piece as a scrap already. And you know, that's the nice thing, our paper has two sides, so if you mess it up and you don't want to use, you can just flip it over and use the other side. So now once it's on this blue paper, the stuff on the back won't show through. There, so there's the inside of our card. Easy peasy, right? Let's do this technique I keep talking about now. So for this technique, what you're going to do is you're going to start with the polished pink ink. And then one of our blending brushes. You're just going to ink up the brush, start over here, so you're not really starting on the paper, because you'll have like a little blob of ink on there, where if you start over here and then move onto your cardstock, then you don't have that big old blob right there on your paper. Now, in the case of this technique, if you end up with little blobs, that's okay, because it just gives it a little bit of texture and dimension. It's just that there's some things that you might stamp that you don't want that. And it does take a few coats to get this as bright as you want it, but it does, as the ink starts to settle into the paper, it does get brighter. Not considerably so, but I know when I made this last night, I was worried about how light it was compared to when I first tried the technique. And it did seem to get a little bit darker as the ink dried. See what I'm talking about those little blotches? I got some on there, I've got one right there. Not a big deal, you can kind of blend them in a little bit, but it's not a huge crisis. Because for this technique, I don't really care about it being perfectly smooth. So I am going over it a few times, just because I do want it to be brighter and darker. And all I'm doing is swirling the brush around. These brushes are great. You get 3 of them for $12, I think. And I have a couple sets. I might buy one more. And I just don't wash them. I have one that I use for reds and pinks. Well, actually more of the pinks, and then one that I use for like orange and yellow. One that I use for blues. One I use for greens. One for purple. But you can also wash them. But if you don't wash them, they actually work a little bit better, because it's kind of like a cast iron pan where they say don't wash it because it seasons the pan. This is the equivalent of seasoning the pan. You use it and then, you know, put it away when you're done, and then the next time you use it, you're adding another flavor on there, another color. So, okay, so I colored my paper. Now I'm going to take my stamp, and I have, these are the spritzers. You can buy these, they come in a pack of 3 for $3.50, I think. And what you do is you want to spray. I want you to be able to see what I'm doing here. I'm spritzing over the stamp, and I want to make sure it gets it everywhere, but don't over spritz it, and I'll show you why here in just a moment. So you spritz it, get it wet, and then you're gonna stamp. I didn't put any ink on the stamp. All I did was put the water on it, and you can see how it lifted some of the ink off of that paper. And let's see if, I don't know if you can see it from the distance, but up close you can really see. And it's kind of like a Polaroid photo in that the longer it sits, the more that tends to stand out. So again, I'm spritzing my stamp. And I'm just doing a little background pattern here. Nothing really precise, just stamping the image so it's a background. This would make beautiful background paper. You could do like a whole sheet of it and then cut it up for use. But you do want to spray it every time because you want to make sure there's enough water on there. And then I kind of shake it a little bit just to get the extra off. Okay, so you can see how that's really starting to show up. Now, my first go at it yesterday was this one, and I actually kind of like the way this looks. It reminds me of batik, but that wasn't the look I was going for last night. This, I had used too much water. It also buckled my paper a little bit. If this is the look you're going for, you can avoid the buckling by just laying the paper like under some books or something like that while it dries. Give it a little longer to dry and lay it under flat things. It'll flatten back out, not a big deal. But this wasn't the look I was going for last night. I wanted something a little more subtle, a little more like this. So here we go. We've got this. I'm going to set it aside to dry while we work on the envelope and other parts of the card. Now we're going to do the envelope, and I need a piece of scratch paper again. Get the one I used earlier. Because with this technique, I don't want to get it all over my envelope. I just want it to be on the flap. So you can see I am just putting the paper under the flap of the envelope like that. And now we're going to do the exact same thing as we did on the paper. This is quite a bit smaller section, so it shouldn't take quite as long to get it colored. Maybe another pass with the pink. If you don't want to do this on your envelope, this is another one where you could use the Designer Series paper from the In Color Designer Series pack, where it's just a little subtle pattern like what we did on the first card. Okay. And now I'm going to take my stamp, I'm going to spray it, get it a little bit wet, stick it down there. And then I'm going to do one more. Oh, I think I got too much water on it that time. Just remember to shake the stamp a little bit, that'll get some of that extra water off. Ooh, that one, see, you can see the big difference there on that one. I don't know if it's going to be wet enough there to get that second image, but now I'm going to set this aside and let the envelope dry. You don't want to get it too wet because you've got the gum on the inside of the envelope, and you know what happens when you get that wet, it's going to stick to itself. So give it a chance to dry, kind of prop it so that flap is up maybe. But that's all there is to that technique. Super duper simple, right? So now I just want to get some of this extra water off this stamp because now we're going to actually stamp with it. Again, we're going to use the Stays On ink, and just so you know, Stays On ink will stain your stamp. That's not a huge problem. I mean, some people don't like it, it really bothers them, and they do have Stays On cleaner. We have Stays On cleaner that you can purchase to get that off. I personally don't care about it on my stamps. It doesn't stain it in a way that the color transfers after when you try to use the stamp again onto the new project, so I'm not terribly worried. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to ink up my stamp. When I have a big stamp like this, I prefer to take the ink pad to the stamp rather than doing it this way, because I feel like I have a little more control. I can see where the ink is going. Okay, now I'm just going to put it on here, just making sure it's on the paper. You can line it up however, because we're going to die cut it and get it out. So, or get it, you know, into its little shape, so it's not a huge deal. Let's go ahead and color this stamp though before we die cut it. And the reason I suggest that is because if you mess up and need to recolor it or whatever, you haven't gone through the process of die cutting. Only takes a minute or two to die cut, but it's kind of nice to not have to worry about it. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, I have some of the Bumblebee ink, I have some of the Misty Moonlight, and actually for this one, I take that back. I didn't use the Bumblebee, I used the So Saffron because I wanted a little bit lighter yellow. I'm also using the Polished Pink, and I'm also using Pear Pizzazz. What I'm going to do here is take, you guys have seen me do this technique before, so I'm not going to necessarily belabor how I did it, but for those of you who are new, I will explain it a little bit. These are our blending pens, and they are clear. And what you do, that you get a pack of 3 of them. Each one has 2 tips. The tips are exactly the same. So essentially you're getting 6 pens. Oh, I made a mess with my ink. Okay, so now I'm going to take this and I'm going to get my little block. Get ink on my block, just like that. Oh, and you don't want to leave your StazOn pad open like I did. It dries out very, very fast. It's alcohol based, and so it will dry out super fast if you do that. Okay, set that aside in case I want more green. All I'm doing is I'm getting a little bit of ink on my pen, and then I'm scribbling on my scratch paper because I want to be using a very light version of this. I'm holding the pen very lightly, and I'm not using dark ink. I'm just getting the leaves here. I've said this before, but one of the things that I really like about a watercolor look, which is kind of what you get with these, doing this, is that there doesn't tend to be a lot of precision with it. And so if you go out of the lines a little bit, that's okay. And I'm just coloring in where Stampin' Up! Has already provided shadow for the different leaves. I'm make sure what leaves I might have missed. Did I get all my leaves? There's a couple right here. Okay, I think I have them all. So now to clean off my pen to move to another color, I just scribble until it's running clear. And I'm going to just clean it off on my chamois. Okay, and now put away that ink pad. Let's do our blue. And for this, I really only wanted to do the big flowers in blue. So ink up my block. And then again, I'm just hitting the areas that Stampin' Up! Provided for shade. That's one nice thing about our, ooh, that kind of went a little more out of the line than I wanted, but our designers who are artists who design all of our stamps, they really do a good job of providing us with the artwork done in such a way that if we aren't really much of artists ourselves, the stamps will do the work for us. Okay, one down. This also is one that as it soaks into the paper a little bit more, you get a different look. I'll show you here in just a moment what I'm talking about. And I want to get that one right there at the top. Okay, so you can see on I did a little bit darker last night than I did tonight. I made it lighter tonight on purpose because that's really what I wanted, but you can see how it does really lighten up into the paper as it soaks in. So we're going to clean off our block, and now we're going to do the pink. You can see this actually does go pretty quickly. So let's put the blue ink pad away. And I want to color, make sure it's clear. It is. So let's ink up our block. Now I'm going to do the same thing. Oh, I found a little leaf I missed. Darn it. I'll come back and get it at the end. I scribbled off a little more than I wanted to on that one. And you can see I'm not coloring the whole petal. I'm just coloring that shaded area that Stampin' Up! Has provided. And even that, I'm not really being precise about making sure I get the whole thing or don't go over the edges or anything like that. And that one's a little brighter than I think I meant for it to be, but that's okay. Another one that I did a little brighter than I intended, but it's all right, different shades. Okay, now let's clean off this brush. Clean off the block. I'm going to go in and get that one little leaf again. The reason I'm not pulling the ink directly off the ink pad is because A, it is a lot darker when you do that, and it takes away the ink from the ink pad in a non-uniform kind of way, so you don't want to do that. Okay, make sure this is clean before we go for the yellow, and then we're ready to do our die cutting. Got a quiet bunch here tonight. Okay, get a little bit of yellow on my block. And here, again, I'm kind of trying to just get the little spots that Stampin' Up! Has given. I'm not completely coloring in that center. Oops, had a little pink section I forgot too. Okay. Because I really just want enough yellow to give it just a touch of color. Like that. Oops. Throwing stuff around over here. I want to get that little tiny touch of pink that I forgot. And then we're done coloring this. There. I'll go through all that just for that one little spot. Okay. Now we are done with our stamping and our coloring. Well, we have one more thing to stamp, and that'll be the sentiment that we're going to put on there, but we'll do that in just a moment. Find my cap to put my pen away. Okay, now make sure I try to keep some of this ink off my fingers so I don't transfer it to my card. I'm getting pretty inky tonight. Okay, let me grab my cutter. This is my mini cutting and embossing machine. We have two. We have a big one and a little one. This one is great for portability. Some of our dies don't fit into it though, and you need the bigger one. But most of our dies do work with this. And I grabbed the wrong, no, that's the right plate. Okay, now I want to put that one on. And that, I'm going to grab the die. Now normally when I have something like this, I take a Post-it, little Post-it flags that I use to hold it in place so that it doesn't move on me. But my little Post-it flags seem to have grown fuzzy little legs and run away. So I'm going to use these instead, I think. It's another Post-it label thing. Because you want to be able to, you don't want it to mar your paper. So these dies are a little bit different to line up because they're designed to not cut right on the edge of the image. They give you a little bit of a halo around the image. So you do have to play with it a little bit. Uh-oh. It's not going to fit with that. I need to have it go the other direction. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to feed that through. Sorry about the shaking. I know that this table shakes when I emboss. Okay. See how there's a little bit of a halo around the stamped image? So it's just a little bit different. I like it. I like it a lot, actually. But you just have to line it up different than you would with the ones that are a little closer to the image. Okay, put all my dies away. I always recommend put your dies away as soon as you're done using them because little boogers like to wander off and get lost. Okay, now what I did is I took 3 of these blue ones like we used on the inside, and I just kind of decided where I wanted to put them so that they'd be sticking out in various places. So what I did is, let's use a little bit of liquid glue here. I just put a little bit of glue on the front of this. And if it ends up with a little too much glue that gets all over, it's not really a huge problem because it's going to be covered up anyway. But I think I like that right there, like that. Get another one in there, and you can put these in at different lengths and different directions, just however you like them. But they just added a little bit of depth to the picture. Whoops, put another one right about here. And then let's do the last one down below. There. Yeah, well, I don't want it to look like it's an extension of the one on the other side, you know? There, we can go like that. There's a little bit showing, but I'll just trim that off. Oh, scissors. There we go. I'm just going to trim that off. Okay, so there's that piece. We're going to go ahead and stick that down onto our piece that we created. This got a little bit wet, so you can see that it's buckled a little bit, but I think the glue will hold it down okay. Especially if you're using an adhesive like the Seal Plus, because it is a stronger adhesive, so it'll hold it down and force it into that shape that you want. I am putting a little bit extra on though, just to be certain. And then, oh my, looks like I forgot my pink piece. Hold on, please hold. Okay. Now I have my polished pink layer, and I'm just going to put this on here. There's not a huge border. It's about a 1/16 of an inch. Okay. And now we're going to go ahead and glue this down onto our card. And for this I went ahead and I used the glue just because I thought that it would be hard to roll my Seal Plus over the little pieces of the blue that are on the back, and I didn't want to be tearing them off. And it looks like I'm putting a lot of glue on, but I'm actually using just a very small bead of glue. Whoop. And then also go ahead and put some on the backs of this part of the flower so that these stay down. Okay, now we're just going to put this on here. Make sure you don't go off the edge anywhere. Wanted this up just a little higher. There we go. Now, I want to put just a little bit of glue under there. Hold it for just a moment while it sets. Okay, so now I have a strip here that is, I want to say this is 3/8 of an inch. It's very narrow. Might be 1/4 of an inch, but I think it's 3/8. And I have my birthday message somewhere. This tiny little stamp on this big, huge block. And it says, have a perfect birthday. I'm going to stamp that in the Misty Moonlight. And I'm going to stamp it right about the center. There we go. Not too bad if I say so myself. And then I'm going to put the little mini dimensionals on the back of it. It's just a little too narrow for the regular size dimensionals. What I like to do so that they're somewhat evenly spaced is I'll do the ends and then the middle and then kind of in between. And this strip, by the way, is 4 1/4 inches wide because I wanted it to span the whole width of the card, not just the card front piece. So now, figure out about where you want it, and I think this is about where I did. Actually, I'm going to put this on the card first, and that way I can make sure it's lined, the strip there, the sentiment, is lined up with the card itself. Check and make sure that I was putting it on the card right side up. Because I've done that before where I do the inside and then I do the front and they're going opposite directions. We've all been there, right? Okay, so now I'm just going to line this up. I want to make sure that it's side to side or end to end, however you want to look at it. It's a little bit crooked, so let's straighten her out. There we go. And last but not least, we have these awesome little iridescent rhinestone basic jewels. These are new in the new mini catalog. And I don't know if the camera even does them justice, but they're iridescent is, well, they're called iridescent rhinestones. That's the best way to describe them. And they sort of take on the color that you put them on. So let's put a few on the card. See, I'll put one right about there, and one right about there, I think. And then let's put one on the bottom too, down here by this flower. There. Just a little bit of extra sparkle, but not a ton, so it's still, the flower is still our main image that we see when we look at the card. So we've got the card and our stamped envelope. You can see how my envelope's kind of buckling because I got my stamp too wet. But if that matters to you, like I said, just flatten it under a book or something. So that is how you do the watermark technique. So that's all I've got for you guys tonight. Let me clear this out and we'll take a peek at everything that we made. Stuff is starting to roll away. Okay, we have got this one that we just made with the watercolor or the watermark technique. We also have this one that we made with the whitewash technique. And then we also have this one that we made just using the stamp as it is and keeping it nice and simple. So that's what I have for you guys tonight. If you like what you saw tonight, I would love it if you would like this video, share the video, or even give it a thumbs up if you're watching it on YouTube. Subscribe to my page. You'll get the the notifications of additional videos I do. I do this every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Pacific time. And I'd love to see you join us again. If you want to purchase any of the supplies that I used tonight or check out that new catalog that I was telling you about, you can go to my website at heathersides.stampinup.net. And if you place an order under $150, it would help